Welcome to Crafty Little Beach. This is Julie. Today I have a Dollar Tree DIY for you. For this spring bee DIY, I wanted to make a giant sunflower wreath for my front door, and I'm going to use one of the bunny wreath forms for this. Now, you really don't have to have the bunny wreath form. You could just use one of the medium size or smaller wreath forms like this. Now, the inspiration that I saw uses 5 or 6 of these bunny wreath forms and they stack them all on top of each other. There's no way I'm going to be able to find that many in Dollar Tree, and I wouldn't want to wipe them all out anyway. And so I was able to find one, and I'm just going to use some wired jute from the Dollar Tree to make the rest of my petals. Now, this was definitely way more work than probably stacking 5 or 6 of them on top of each other, but I'll show you how I made mine. For the wired jute, I'm just cutting a piece that is going to be a little bit longer than the bunny ear, right? And I'm using masking tape on this because I know how this likes to fall off the wire, the twine from the Dollar Tree, and this trick worked really well. You're not going to be able to see the ends of these anyway, so I can leave the tape on there. I just put the tape on there and cut it about halfway, and I'm going to go ahead and cut a second one here as well. I just taped every single one. I didn't want it to be too thick, but I do want it to be tight here. And I'm just using wire cutters to cut that wire inside of it. And it was actually able to cut through everything. So that made it a little bit easier, and I didn't have to worry about the twine falling off of the wire. And I wasn't sure how many I was going to do. I know a lot of people do 6 of the bunny wreaths on top of each other, so that's a total of 12 petals. They're really kind of close together like that, so I think I ended up doing 10. Yes, 10 petals, and that includes the 2 bunny ears. So I need to cut 8 of these. I could get about 3 out of one package, and then the 4th piece wasn't long enough. So I'm just going to continue this on and kind of cut just a few at a time, and I could always cut more later. I didn't want to make too many. But this was probably the most labor intensive part of this wreath DIY was cutting all of these pieces and wiring them to the wreath form. Since I bent them in half like that, it was really easy to get that bunny ear or petal shape. And I made them a little longer so I would have enough wire to go around the wreath form. I'm just going to have it go around the middle wreath, the middle wreath form, that center one, and I'm going to wrap it around a few times to hold it on there. And that seemed to work. It does kind of want to come out a little bit, so I do end up gluing that twine down to the outer ring as well. And it worked pretty well. Now, if you were going to do the 5 or 6 bunny wreaths on top, if you want to do it kind of the easier way, I have seen other people do theirs. And what they end up doing is cutting out that center part of the wreath, the center circle, so that it's more of a flat wreath and it doesn't have like the 3D to it. So you can stack them all together without getting a super thick wreath in the middle. I kind of like only having one wreath form here in the middle, though. I think that made it a little bit easier for the final step of the sunflower. So I'm just trying to space them out kind of evenly, kind of like what I have the bunny ears. I kind of separated those a little bit so they weren't touching. I know a lot of people, when they make these, make their petals touching. And if you were going to do 6 of them, 12 petals, it would probably make them all touch. And so it's kind of up to you whether you want to do 10 or 12, but I chose to do 10. I didn't really want them completely touching. I wanted a little bit of separation between each one. And this was a time consuming wreath, and it was probably because of this extra step of having to make all of these petals, but I absolutely love how it turned out. And it was the only kind of really thick wire that I could think of from the Dollar Tree that would be easy enough to maneuver and attach to this, but strong enough to keep its shape for the petals. So I just keep cutting these. The masking tape method worked great. I'll probably use that all the time when I cut this wire jute because I always struggle with it. And the total time I spent on this sunflower bee wreath was, I think, 2 hours. So it was a really long DIY, but I have it way sped up for you. So just a few more petals, and we have a flower shape. And from there, we can keep decorating this DIY. I was just checking my spacing on everything and making sure the wire was bent properly. And I think that looks pretty good. Now for the petals, I wanted all of mine to be yellow like a sunflower, and I found this soft, like fleecy yellow fabric at the Dollar Tree this year. And luckily I picked up 2 packages of this because it's definitely gonna require a lot. Other items that you could use to line your petals is like the honeybee or honeycomb burlap. There's honeycomb fabric and other kinds of yellow fabrics as well. But I love the color of this one. I thought it would be perfect. So I just sketched out one bunny ear on the fabric with a Sharpie. And I'm going to kind of fold it here so I can cut 4 at a time. A little bit of a time saver. It's a little longer than half though, so I do have to go in for my second piece, but I was able to save quite a bit of this fabric. And then I'm just gonna go ahead and cut it all at once. I didn't pin it down or anything. It seemed to stay in place pretty well, just making sure everything is still lined up. And we're gonna cut this out. I want it cut pretty much the right size, but a little bit wider so that there'll be enough fabric to attach it to the sides of the petal. And this fabric, it was folded up, so there is some wrinkling in it, and I wanted to make sure that it didn't have any wrinkling in my sunflower. So I do go through and iron these once I cut them. It'd probably have been a little bit easier to iron the fabric first though, because I had to go in and do them all separately. So I'm using that same little bunny ear for a template. I've stacked it in 4 here on the second piece. And I'm actually going to draw it on there. It makes it a little bit easier. I probably shouldn't have used an orange marker though, because I had a hard time trying to cut all of that off. A chalk marker would probably work a little bit better, but we're going to cut out 4 more here. And so now I'll just need 2, and I still have both of those fabric scraps there, so no problem. I'll have plenty of fabric for this. I kind of like the fact that it's yellow, more traditional for a sunflower, this fabric, but you could always mix it up and use different fabric for each petal. That could be really fun as well. So I just needed 2 more and we're almost there. And then I was like, I do want to iron these. I have a Cricut Easy Press. I don't really use this for t-shirts anymore since I have a fancy heat press now, but it's great for my crafting station to iron fabrics that I'm crafting with. So it is handy and I love using it for that. So I'm just going to give all of these a quick iron and then we're going to attach these to the petals. I did have to do it a different way for the wire versus the wire jute, and I'll show you how I put it all together. Now, normally when I cover Dollar Tree wreath forms with fabric, I will attach the fabric to the back, the wire on top, and then I'll cover the wire with something else like Dollar Tree rope, which is what we're going to use on these petals too. And so I'm going to do that for the wired parts. I find that the easier way, but when I got to the twine parts, I had to do it a little bit differently because I didn't want that twine to get in the way. It's definitely thicker and bulkier than just the wire. The wire is really small, so it's easy to kind of hide underneath the Dollar Tree rope. So I just put hot glue all around the petal and laid this on here, kind of stretching out the fabric to make sure it goes edge to edge. Don't worry if you have a little bit extra fabric, you can always trim it off if you can see it after you add your rope. But these 2 petals were really easy with the metal parts here. So I'm going to do the same thing here for the second one. Now, since I can't really go underneath with the wired jute because that jute's going to get in the way, I'm actually going to lay it on top of it. So I'm just going to do a half of it at a time so my hot glue doesn't set up. And I just put hot glue there and lay my fabric out going all the way to the edge of it. And one thing I liked about doing the twine parts is the petals aren't perfect, which of flower petals are not perfect. So I kind of think it added to the vibe of it. I made my fabric a little bit longer here so I can make sure that it's all going to be tucked into the center of the sunflower when we're done with it. And that seemed to work really well. So I just do hot glue on half, lay the fabric on there, make sure it's lined up properly, and then go in and do the other half. And I just have to do that 6 more times. That also adds to like the time that it took to do this project, but I'm so glad I made it. It's so large. You can use this for a wall hanging, but I think it's gonna look great on my front door. So many fun options for a spring wreath, and I think this is a perfect theme. And I can also use it for summer too, so win-win. I just keep going around. I'm using like the fuzzy fabric up here on this and attaching one petal at a time. Having them all cut and iron and everything like that did kind of increase the speed on this, kind of made it a little bit like an assembly line. Now, if you're going to use the bunny ears for all of them, you would go under the wire for all of them too. But this is how I made mine. Mine was a little bit more of a challenge, making my own petals, but I really love how it turned out. Now that I have it all together, I noticed that the petals that were not made out of metal wanted to come out a little bit. So I just put some hot glue on the twine on the back of every one of the petals and just glued that to the wreath form, that outer wreath form there, so they would stay flat against my door and not come apart. I guess I could have wired them to the outer ring as well, but I thought it'd be easier to kind of hide all the components if I went into that middle ring. But that seemed to do the trick. So I just made sure that those were all glued down really well. And now we need to make this look better by bordering them all out. For that, I'm going to use Dollar Tree rope. I'm going to use like the thinner one. I had so many pieces of scrap rope in this size, so this was a great DIY for that because I got rid of so many scraps. So I just start here, making sure it's a little bit longer so it kind of goes inside that wreath form and simply attaching it with hot glue. I want to make sure that I hide the wire. And I also try to hide the outsides of the fabric. If there is some yellow fabric coming out, I can always trim that off. And I'm going to do these each individually, which really adds to the scrap rope factor. You could do this with a thicker rope from the Dollar Tree too, but I kind of wanted to do it with a thinner one if I could. And so the wire wreath forms were really easy. I just glue it to the wire like that, making sure it's in the perfect position before it glues down, and cut off the excess rope. Now, basically, it's the same thing for the petals that I DIY'd. I can kind of feel there where the twine was underneath of it and just glue it to the edge of the fabric and just kind of do the same thing. And we're going to continue doing that rope all the way around. This is why this wreath took 2 hours, because there's so many steps involved in it. But I'm going to put this in super speed, rapid fashion crafting here so we can get this all lined out. Then the next thing I need to do is going to be the center of the sunflower. And I have a fun idea for that. I was trying to think of something circular that I could put inside there to have like a harder surface so I could do the center of the sunflower. I thought about using foam board or poster board, but I didn't know how well that would hold up outside. So I decided to go with a wood sign. And I was able to find a wood sign from Dollar Tree that I think will work perfectly. Now, once I have it all glued on, I do have like a little bit of a mess of hot glue here on the back. I went and kind of cleaned mine up a little bit with my heat gun, but honestly, you're not going to be able to see it back there anyway. And then it is time for the center. So this is the wood circle that I found. It's the perfect size. It doesn't have to be this one. It really can be any of them. But you know what? It already has a hanger on there, so I thought I would take advantage of that, kind of just putting that through the wreath form here. And I can attach this to the wreath form. The problem is that the wreath form, that middle section's higher and it's a little bit larger than the sign, so there's really no great way to glue this down. So I actually ended up using rope to glue it down. So I'm using more of that scrap rope that I used for the petals. And I'm gluing the rope to the wood sign and also to the wreath that I'm DIYing. And that's going to secure the wood on there, since there was really no good way for me to secure that wood down to that wreath form. I guess you could always wire it too, but I really didn't want anything else to get in the way. And you're not going to be able to see this rope in the end, but it did provide a good way to glue this on. So I just went around one time with hot glue. And then I just want to find kind of the center of this. I'm going to work from the center of the flower out with Dollar Tree rope. And for this one, I'm going to switch up to the larger diameter rope, just so I don't have to use as much. It really doesn't matter which one you use. And I start right here in the middle with a little dab of hot glue and just start spiraling this around. What I want to do is spiral rope until it covers the beginning of the petals and it covers that wire wreath form, and that's going to be the center of our sunflower. I thought about painting this like a darker color, but I really like how the rope matches the rope around the petals, and I think the Dollar Tree rope is really pretty on its own, so I'm going to leave it this color. Now, the wider rope does cover more at a time, but it is shorter. There wasn't enough on here to make it all the way around, so I did have to use 2 packages. But it's easy enough to start and stop on this. Just make sure you remove your tape from your ends and kind of push it together as you start and stop. You can always add a little hot glue to that little section to make it blend in a little bit better. And my circles stayed pretty symmetrical here. I was a little worried that it wouldn't be when I got to this part, but I didn't have any problems covering everything up here. So I just continue with that same piece of rope. And basically I use the whole thing. So going all the way around. So 2 packages of the thicker rope there for the middle. And I want to kind of cut this at an angle here so it doesn't take away from the round shape here, and glue down the little ends of the rope here with some hot glue. It's looking so cute. I really love how this DIY turned out. And this is a bee DIY. We haven't got to the bee yet. And then it's Dollar Tree rope. So of course it's a little bit fuzzy. I just went around with my lighter to help clean it up. And one thing I noticed is that my hanger was not going to be long enough for a wreath hanger to hang on my door, because then I don't want it to be behind the petals. I want it to be longer. So I had to add a little bit more twine to it to make mine long enough to hang on the front door as well. Now for the bee, I picked up this cute little bee wind chime from the Dollar Tree. You could also use like the bee yardstick or whatever you can find. This does have holes in the top and bottom. I'm going to show you how I go about covering those up though. I just use a pair of pliers and take all of the metal chain off mine. I thought it was the perfect size bee for this. It's painted really nicely, so I really don't have to do anything to it. I do want to cover up the holes in it though, and I thought I would use something that would also help to attach it. So I'm using some of the Dollar Tree thumbtacks that come in the little nail boxes from the Dollar Tree hardware section. And I put a little hot glue down here on the rope to secure my little bee to it. And this is going to also secure it. So I put a little hot glue in each one of my holes to glue the thumbtack down into the rope. And I can always paint those to kind of make that blend in a little bit. And that was a really good way to try to cover up those holes. I just used a yellow paint pen and a color that was really close here for the little end of my bee, and switch it up for a black one here for its head. And I also have a little bit of a black stripe here, so I'm going to continue that on too to make the thumbtack completely blend into the project. And this is how it turned out, my giant sunflower bee wreath for spring or summer. It was a labor of love, but I absolutely love how it turned out. I think it's so much fun. What do you guys think about this one? I've always wanted to make something like this, but again, finding that many bunny heads, unless you get really lucky or order them online, I think it would be kind of hard to do. But this is one way you can do it without them.